Our Utah Sharp survey says that 53% of teen girls have persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. I mean, that's more than half of our teen girls who are struggling. We had 18% of our Utah youth who seriously considered suicide last year. That's 1 in 6. And we only have 37% of our youth getting enough sleep on an average school night.
The director of the Office of Families for the state, Amy Winder-Newton, joined us on Studio 5 last week to discuss those alarming statistics and to provide solutions. So today, we want to continue the solutions conversation. Studio 5 parenting contributor Heather Johnson is sharing an age-by-age guide for talking to your kids about suicide. And her goal here is to empower parents and families to take charge of this topic instead of feeling paralyzed by it. Thanks, Heather, for being here. I think that does happen to a lot of parents, but I love how you're framing this in a really simple way, saying this is just a conversation about mental health, something maybe we are already doing.
It is. Hopefully we're already having those conversations. This is a conversation about mental health. Remember, suicide isn't considered a mental illness, but mental illnesses do lead or can lead potentially to suicide. So we want to be having mental illness, mental health conversations with our kids all the time. And so that's where we want to start. It can take a little of the pressure off of us also when we consider it from that standpoint and recognize the normalcy in it. We can normalize it when we realize that these mental health conversations should be conversations that we're having all the time. Now, it can be really challenging, right? This gets a little bit scary, like you said. It's scary because we don't often know what to say. We don't know what to say to our kids. It can be scary because maybe they're not feelings or emotions we've ever experienced, and so we're not quite sure how to relate to them. It can also be really, really scary because we tend to think that if we bring up suicide, it's going to make it more likely or put ideas in our kids' heads that we don't want there. And that is not true. It is not true that talking about it makes it more likely. That's not true.
Yeah, I've heard many parents have that feeling, and I've also heard that science behind it, that that's not true. It just takes it getting into our heads that that is the case.
And believing it, right? We tend to think if I say it, then it's going to happen. And that isn't the case. What it actually does is it creates a safe environment where they can talk about it. So we want to work through those challenges. Another huge challenge we face in having these conversations is that the timing of it does matter. We tend to have these conversations with our kids when they're already low, when they're struggling, when they've maybe had a few days that are now kind of in the back of our minds going, hey, what's going on with this 17-year-old? What's happening here? We want to have these conversations not just when they're low. In fact, we want to aim to have these conversations about mental health and suicide when they're high, when they're on an up, not on a down. When we ask them when they're on a low, they will look at us and say, nothing, I'm fine, it's no big deal. They're not in a position to communicate. When we ask them when they've had maybe a good day or a lighter day, they're going to be much more likely to have a conversation with us about it. It's just that our minds aren't prone to say, oh, you're having a good day, let me bring up suicide or mental health today and have this conversation. We're not prone to do that. So we do want to take care to make sure that we're having those conversations at those right times.
And in that same vein, I was mentioning to you, my son who's still in high school is very like happy-go-lucky all the time. And so he's not one I've thought to talk about it with a lot, but we need to be talking about it with all our kids, no matter their disposition.
It's exactly right. No matter their disposition. Mental health is something we want to be talking to our kids about all the time, regardless. Now, there are some unbelievable benefits and reasons why we should be doing this. One major reason is that we want to dispel any myths that might come up or that they might have about suicide and mental health. And when we're talking to them, we can be sure that we're teaching them true, correct, right things. We also know that communication is the best prevention. Hear that again, communication is the best prevention. So that should be the single greatest motivator for us having these conversations. On top of that, we want to do this because it creates a very safe place for our kids to talk to us if they're struggling or if they're not, that they can come to us about whatever it might be and know that it's a safe place to have conversations. That is vital. It's vital.
Let's break this down by age. We said we would do that. So let's start with that youngest group. How do we start this conversation with elementary school age kids?
Yeah, when they're very young, we're going to keep things very simple and very short. Now, the way we want to describe this to a very small child is that someone's brain had a disease. We're going to keep it that simple and that brief. They are most likely going to hear something, maybe hear the word and bring it up to us or say, hey, I heard this somewhere, or they said this on the news. We're going to, again, not go into details. We're not going to draw that out. We are going to make sure that we explain that it's a disease, and as a result of that disease, this is what's happened. You can describe it to a small child like you would someone who has a cancer or someone who has had a heart attack. We can describe it that same way.
And what about for even younger than elementary, those preschool ages? Is that the same?
That would be what we want to do. Now, if we're going to move up into elementary school kids, we're going to increase it a little bit. It's still going to stay very short. We're going to describe it the same way. We're going to start to introduce emotion or feelings. So you're going to take someone who's maybe in second grade, a child, and you're going to be able to say that it's a disease and that it's sad. And we're going to help them understand the emotions that they might be or people around them might be experiencing as a result of suicide, that there's sadness to it. We also can start introducing at that age that there is a mental illness behind it, meaning saying words like depression and introducing those things so that they can understand what's going on. Still short, still very simple, and we're going to follow their lead when they're young that way. Now, once they hit middle school, we can start increasing that a little bit. So once they start to hit middle school, we're going to still keep things appropriate. They're going to lead the way, but we're also, with the feelings included, we're then going to start teaching them what warning signs look like. We want them at this age to start understanding what are the signs and the symptoms that we're looking for if you or someone you know might be struggling with suicide. And so we're going to be bringing those things in. It's also a really good time to start asking them if they have any of these thoughts or if they've had any friends who've expressed any of these things to them. And so once they hit those middle school years, we want to be having those conversations with them.
Yeah, because I would think we need to delineate a little bit between we all get sad. That doesn't mean it's going to lead to this. And how do we do that in the right way?
Just in those words to explain to them that emotions are something all of us deal with. We're all dealing with emotions to differing degrees, and to help them understand, one, sadness or even a depressed day, that doesn't automatically lead to any of these things. Remember, we're having these conversations to keep the dialogue wide open. We want them to know that it is a safe place to come and say, I feel sad today. Help me figure out what this means. Or these are the thoughts I've had. Or I'm feeling so low, I don't think I'm helping anyone or I should be here anymore. We want them to know they can come to us and we're there to help support and facilitate all the help that they need.
Yeah, that middle school age I think is so critical. Also, I mean, every age, but high school, I mean, this is in their face quite a bit. How does it change when they're in high school?
It is. So we're stacking, right? We're starting very simple. We're then helping them understand that mental health is involved. We're talking about emotions and feelings. We're then talking about symptoms. And when we are starting to head into those teenage years, we want them to then stack and add to that, what do I do if I'm feeling this way or thinking this way or someone I know is? We want them to know what to do, whether that's coming to us, whether it's finding a trusted teacher, whether that's knowing what hotline to call or who to reach out to. We want them to know what to do. So again, we're starting young to have these open conversations so that when they are in a situation where it's right in front of them or when they have had a few years that have been extra challenging, the dialogue is so open that they know what to do, that they will come talk to us. They will discuss it with us and feel safe. If it's never been brought up, it is really uncomfortable to show up at your kitchen counter with one of your parents and say, this is where I'm at. It's really hard to do that.
Yeah, it needs to be a familiar subject that we've talked about before.
That we've made sure is really open so that they can do that. So again, we want to go off of where our kids are at. We want to go off of what they're being exposed to and the questions, the lead that they're taking. We want to make sure it's age appropriate, and we want to make sure it's safe, but it's stacking that way so that each conversation is giving them a little bit more and a little bit more power or tools to navigate this challenge.
Thank you so much. We got to start now. We got to start now wherever we are, never too late. So Heather also coaches and counsels families and individuals, and you can find her information on our website. Okay, now, this is such a sensitive topic, so we want everyone to know that if you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, help is available. So call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988.